Okay, as I say, tonight's kind of short kind of broadcast or transmission, so I'm just going to move the pointer, is is part of a series connected with the ritual year, or what I might call a Setian ritual year. So it's my idea. It's a ritual year that I kind of I don't know what you'd say, created or discovered or whatever, a bit of both, I suppose. Uh, that I've followed for a number of cycles now, and mostly, you know, as part of the magical work. And I've developed a certain amount of liturgy, and that's published in the book, The Ritual Year in Ancient Egypt. With some, obviously, it's like any sort of set of liturgy, as you use it, you kind of add to it or you take things out and whatever, but it still pretty much works. And I thought it would be, or it was suggested to me by Miriam Davey, in fact, that it would be a good idea to kind of share some of this as in real time, as much as that's possible, or to warn people, so that we could kind of share it, and so you knew that there was a kind of ritual coming up, or that people were doing a particular ritual based on a particular piece of mythology, and as we get to know each other and work together and stuff all over the world, that we might be spread out, that this would have this would create a kind of, I don't know whether they call it an egregore or whatever. It would just add to it, and maybe. I got a message to say, you sound good, you can get on with it now. Guess who that is? Okay, so in this ritual year, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, as it happens, so because I'm using this kind of lunar sequence, which is a little bit different to what is normally kind of used by people who reconstruct Egyptian religion as a ritual year, but maybe I'll go into a little bit of that in a minute. It starts on the new moon, which is a few days ago now, and you get the entire lunar month, and with its ebb and flow, in which to work with a particular god or goddess that and usually by coincidence, or maybe I kind of tweaked it that way. There's always a kind of Setian connection, really. So and also it always seems to fit with the cycle of the year you find in other systems. So it's June, and obviously we're getting closer to summer solstice, when a lot of people, magicians and pagans and whatever, all over the place, kind of doing ritual. It's a special time for them, really, and it just happens, to kind of make this the month that's known in the Egyptian calendar as MesoRe, which literally means the birth of Ra or Re, birth of the sun. It starts now, right? It just happens to start a few days ago on the new moon, and so it takes up the whole of June. So that means that the months in which the sun god is born coincides with the months in which we have a very popular solar festival in all parts of the world, but certainly in Britain, focused often at Stonehenge, which is for the summer solstice. So these things are probably deliberate. Well, there's a reason, I was going to that in a minute. I wanted to kind of, before I go into it too much, I'm not going to speak for very long, just try not to anyway, 20 minutes. Just to mention that a sort of obituary, if you like, or dedicate this talk to the scholar Herman de Velde, who wrote a rather amazing book, influential book, on the god Set, called Set, God of Confusion, and he passed away I think it's just a few days ago. And another one of the companions, Layla, she sent me rather usefully his bibliography, because I think he's very famous Egyptologist really, and he's written lots of stuff, not just on Set but on demonology and all sorts of things. And he sent me this list, and there was, I think there must have been about at least 100 publications, really interesting things. But of course, that book, Set, God of Confusion, had this kind of life outside of the academic world. Really, it had a huge impact on the neo-pagan community, and sort of increased people's knowledge of the cult of Set. So in a way, he was an inspiration for the Setians, one way or another. And the kind of reading, in fact, when you read some of the early accounts, as I talked about this in my book, Set Two Ways, then when you read about the people's accounts of how they started organizations like the Temple of Set, it was that book really. It was someone bringing that along and saying, "Hey, look at this really interesting book," that kind of inspired people, gave them a certain depth really, and that wasn't there in the material before. So respect to Herman Terwilder. I'm not sure we're going to make him into one of the Gnostic saints, but you never know, right? He had a huge influence on us, so let's just we remember him. So going back then to the month, I might just change my glasses. So the month means MesoRe, which I've written, I think, as the title of the talk, Mes. And the word Mes really, which means birth, it's sort of cognate with the name Moses as well, because that's one of the name they say the name Moses means born, right? Or in a sense, he's kind of come born from the waters, kind of thing. So Mesa or Musa, it's kind of there in the Egyptian, very ancient Egyptian word, really, birth of Ra. So I suppose you think, is this the new year? Is it the beginning of a new year, or is it the end of an old one? And that's a kind of strange thing about this month, is that actually MesoRe occurs right at the end of the year. It's the last sacred month of the year. So I suppose it's kind of liminal in some ways. This calendar, the lunar calendar, which is older. I described this in the book. It's much older than the more famous calendar, the 360 plus 5 days that we know from Egyptian culture, which itself is very, very old calendar. Of course, it coincides with the rise of the cult of Osiris. It's as old as the pyramids, but there are records from before that time, or there's things that survive of a lunar ritual year. And in a way, this is, and in that book, you have sort of 30 days of, I have 12 months of 30 days each, really. And whenever you have a lunar calendar, you always have to have some way of calibrating it. To set in you need a fixed point from the heavens each year in order to fix to decide where, because as is well known, in a lunar calendar you have mostly 12 months of 30 days, but every 3 or 4 years you need an extra month, right, to kind of bring everything back to normal again. Otherwise it wanders all over the place. So to keep it in sync with the seasons and everything, you need this, and to work out when to do that, you need a fixed point, usually taken from the stars. So the lunar calendar, the lunar calendar is either called lunar Sothic, if you like, which is somehow calibrated with the helical rising of the Sirius or the dog star solstice, or lunar solar when it's taken from the winter solstice. So as a roundabout way of saying that's Ra, there are several other versions of the same thing. That's why Egyptian stuff is quite difficult, complex and contradictory sometimes. The birth of Ra could either take place at the winter solstice, or it can take place at the summer solstice, really. Now, I said, and that's the lunar Sothic one. Now you say, well, solstice is not. What's Sothic got to do with it? If you know anything about the Sothic cycle and Sirius, you'd say that the helical rising of Sirius takes place in about July, late July, in fact, nothing to do with the solstice. But it's fairly obvious, really, that the helical rising of Sirius, once upon a time, thousands of years ago, actually was much closer to the summer solstice, and the two festivals were kind of linked with each other, probably. Hence, you get this lunar cycle where the birth of Ra takes place in this month, round about the summer solstice. And the new year begins at the end of this month. Unless there has to be an extra month, then we have to wait a month for the new year. And the new year will be, we'll talk about it when it comes, sacred either to the god Thoth, or if you're a sectarian, if you like, you can make it your particular deity gets to be first. So hence I put Set there, because I like that. Okay, so you can do this sort of work with Ra the entire month, as you can with all the other things, the other gods that we've discussed. But obviously, as it is the most appropriate day to work with the birth of Ra, although it occurs every day, is to do this at the summer solstice itself. And so the liturgy and the ritual is really, that's when probably, if you're going to kind of coordinate and think about each other doing this, probably that's when I'm really going to be doing something. Will be for the summer solstice. That's the actual ritual, and I'll kind of mention that a little bit later when we get in the month, when we get closer to it. But the idea is to can prepare now, and you can sort of start the process off and start thinking about the liturgy. But you can do it at any point in this process. And as we'll see, let's say to illustrate this, as the thing I put, the rather lovely colour drawing of the worshipping of the sun is a painting taken from the tomb of Ramesses III in the Valley of the Kings. Obviously, they've improved it there. They've repainted it, but it's rather nice. And you can learn a lot just from looking at that picture, really, as you can with all these pictures. I think a lot of Egyptian stuff doesn't require you to read stuff as much as to look at pictures. So, and the other thing that was posted that is useful, I think, and that is a piece of magic, really, or that you can find magic in it if you do the work. That was posted by Miriam Davey and has kind of been benefiting from instruction on this and been pointing towards it. It was the Great Hymn to the Aten, which is another one of these amazing magical texts that's or ritual texts, liturgy texts that survives from ancient Egypt. And the full text of it is there. There is a magical ritual in there. It's quite long, and if you have to, it pays reading through it with care. Maybe on an appropriate day, use it as a meditation and go through it line by line. And apparently, I'm told, well, I know this is going to be the case, that there's some rather special things to find in there. So I'm not going to go into too much more detail about that particular one. The ritual, in a way, right, that Great Hymn to the Aten is the earliest piece of liturgy, right? It's before the stuff that I'm going to discuss now. The stuff I'm discussing now is sort of comes afterwards and maybe even derived from it. So in the book, I give quite a lot of this, so I'm just going to do a little bit of it. I should say that the vast majority of Egyptian magical hymns are devoted to two gods, Osiris and the sun god Ra. So in a way, you could define the entire Egyptian religion from just those two cults, because almost everything is about them, one way or another. And you could say that the cult of Ra, of the sun god, is, well, I guess it's right. It's going to be probably one of the oldest religions of humanity, isn't it? The sun worship is one of our oldest things. I posted again the little kind of pre-dynastic ritual plate for, I don't know what they put on that, but it's very interesting. Which even has this kind of little pictures, no words then, little picture of almost like a meditation on the sun at dusk through the hours of the night till dawn. So, and that's old, and there's even older stuff. So the solar religion is really, really old. And in a way, there's lots of aspects of the Osirian cult that kind of just take over the Ra stuff anyway. He's kind of so the two cults. That's what you have to do really, is maintain the secrets of Osiris and worship the sun. That's probably 90% of Egyptian religion. So rituals to the sun, characteristically in this, tend to be very long, very, very long. There's a lot to say. There's a lot of them. There's lots and lots of these solar hymns in existence, and they're very long hymns as well. And yeah, so it's a particular mindset. It's like a meditation reading through the thing because it's so long, gets you into a kind of rhythm. And they have a rhythm. The litany of the sun, which comes after the great hymn to the Aten, this comes from, like almost everything in Egypt, it comes from the tomb of Seti I in the Valley of the Kings. There's an awful lot of stuff on the walls. It's like a library, really. There's so many magical texts written on the walls that, it's just a huge amount of stuff. That wasn't really well. You'd only get that material if when you go into the tomb. It's not so well known. It's quite secretive in a way. So the tomb of Seti I, which is a wonderful masterpiece of the ancient world, so-called Belzoni's tomb. I'm going to date it about 1350 before the Common Era, so a long time ago. So these texts, all the solar hymns, they kind of give you a different. It's sometimes said this is more the priestly religion, but maybe it's just a more kind of meditators kind of view, a deeper point of view. There's a common point of view, which is set in Egypt, which is the polytheism. There are lots of different gods and spirits and all the rest. And then there's a kind of a more philosophical, magical point of view, I suppose, in the sense that magic reconstructs these things by thinking and doing them, goes into them in much detail and reconstructs them, which is more pantheistic, that a god like Ra is immanent in nature, in all sorts of things, in the elements, in the physical sun itself, in the river, in the animals, the whole thing. God is all these different emanations, really. And thus with the connection with Set, you see, there's a very strong relationship between Set and the sun god Ra. Set is the emanation of the sun god Ra, as are all the gods. But he's a particular emanation. He emanates particular powers that he needs at particular times. So when he needs passion and aggression and defense, that's why he emanated this god Set, to take this function, to protect him from the forces of chaos and non-being that threaten the path, that threaten our rebirth, every day, and when we go to sleep, it's a mystery. Why do we wake up again? Why does the human computer suddenly come back online? Having been in this kind of unconscious state, suddenly it comes back to life. As it could so easily not be the case, but there's something there that kind of brings us through, that wakes us up in a way. And that's the same for that Set and the sun. And they have a particular moment when they're together as well, which is they're not together, but certainly just before dawn on the solstice. Set and Ra, the sun god, are definitely in each other's company, because that's when they have a lot of stuff to do. So we're talking about a pantheistic stuff. I'll just give you a little taste of that. This is the Litany of Ra, which is a huge document. God, it must be going over walls and walls within this huge tomb. And it is done. I mean, it's interesting to me anyway. It says, this is the book, the title of the book is the beginning of the book of the worship of Ra in the West, which is the heavenly region, and of the worship of the United One in the West. And when anyone reads this book, which is another interesting thing, is it specifically says that whenever someone reads this book, so the reading of the book itself is the enactment of the ritual to some extent. The mere reading of a text that's magic. That is a magical, because the expression of words and the holding of a book, that so often in the Egyptian culture they say that whenever I read this book, the book is obviously a very special thing. And together with the book, they have porcelain figures which are placed upon the ground. I don't know what those figures were, right? But you have little clay figures, in other words, that are placed on the ground at the hour of the setting of the sun, right? The part of this is done. So when the sun goes into the west, into the underworld, and when he needs to triumph over his enemies, right, as he goes there, because this is an ordeal. It's an ordeal of the night. And so that's homage to the Ra, supreme power, the master of the hidden spheres that cause all principles to arise, who dwells in us, and who is born as the all-surrounding universe. See, he's everything, really. Homage to the Ra, supreme power, the beetle, i.e. Kefra, that forms, that rests in the Empyrean, and that is born as his own son. So he gives birth to himself, as we do in a way, from moment to moment. When we are born, when we wake up after the night, we give birth to ourselves. And Ra, of course, creates everything from himself. Homage to the Ra, supreme power, Tanen, the ancient earth god, who produces the other gods, and who fashions what is in him, and who is born with whatever is born within his sphere. Anyway, that's just 3 lines. Each line is a little like a sutra text of later times. It's got a whole kind of very complicated, very interesting insight into the nature of life, the nature of the cosmos. It's all there. And I should say that the text itself is very, very long. That's 10 verses there, but it goes on for pages and pages in the published version. I can't think, probably about 40 or 50 chapters. So it's quite a meditation on life and on death and on the world. And some of that will play a role in the solstice ritual. The other thing I wanted to mention before winding up, really, God, use all the time, it is the spell. So from later times, so you've got the great hymn to the Aten, and then you've got this litany of Ra comes afterwards, and then later times you've also got these very long grimoires to do with Ra. and the sun. And now they're using it to give life to other things, which is some of the mysteries in this, to give life to objects, give life to another person, to bless them, to give life to an object like a ring of power, or an amulet, to give life to a statue or a mummy, which is like a statue as well, to give life to a temple, to give life whenever you need to give life to something. This ritual develops, and this is what you do. So it's probably going to be the sort of thing. As magicians, you might you bless each other, you give life, you breathe life into each other. And of course, famously, this ritual is related to a ritual called the opening of the mouth, where you make a kind of object, or you make a mummy, or you take the corpse which is dead and you do things to it, and then you breathe life into it. The power of using the power of Ra, really, is that all these rituals are all connected to each other. They're all variations on the same theme. So this is a very fruitful area of magic. And so this is given in the book, The Ritual Euro in Ancient Egypt, and it's from the Greek Magical Papyrus, so you can find a version in there as well. And again, it starts with a very, very long hymn to the triple sun, a triple sun being the sun at dawn, when he's born, at midday when he's in his maximum strength, and in the evening when he's old and declining into the west and needs assistance to not be bitten by the snakes and to succumb. So he comes back. And the same thought is there, right? If you think about it, of the pantheism, the pantheistic thought in the address to the triple sun is there. And the same ritual pattern is there, that you start by praying to the sun, then you become the sun, and then there's a kind of there's a magical result that comes from that. The pattern is ancient. It goes through all these things, detectable in all these different things, and certainly in the later magic, this is which we like so much. So just briefly then, because I can't possibly read all this, but just to give you an example, so I invoke and beseech the consecration. So it's a consecration. And then addressing the sun, O gods of the heavens, O gods under the earth, O gods circling in the mid-region, are from one womb. O masters of all the living and the dead, O heedful in many necessities of gods and men, O concealer of things now seen, O directors of Isis, Nemesis, and Andrastia, who spend every hour with you, O sender of fate who travels around the whole world, O commander of the rulers, O exalted of the abased, O revealer of the hidden, O guide of the winds, O arouser of the waves, O bringer of fire at the appropriate time, O creators and benefactors of every race, O lords and controllers of kings, come. Come, benevolent ones, for the purpose for which I call you, and as benevolent assistants in this rite for my benefit.